Good evening, everyone. We are Chester Consulting Group. Our objective here today is to provide an overview and analysis of your company's performance over the last 8 years and to give recommendations to support the best future performance possible. My name is Shelley and I'm the Ethical Consultant for Chester. Also presenting today is our Strategy Consultant Linton, our Crisis Manager Brianna, and our Market Analyst Muhammad. We'd like to thank you, as the Board of Directors of Andrews Limited, for choosing to work with us. I will now pass you first to Muhammad.
Thanks, Shelley. Andrews had a vision to be the best company in the industry. Following the cost leader with the product lifecycle focused strategy, they maintained 5 products to this day in all 5 market segments. Now, their performance and size products, though not completely necessary to their strategy, still remain in their segments, slowly fading away as the market shifts. We know through industry reports that in 2025, Andrews suffered a huge hit to their stock price, dropping $31.46, whilst also racking up an emergency loan of $11 million. Other notable aspects in Andrews' history, the slow phasing of products meant that demand was low, and so that other segments were required to ensure that the products would sell even a little. And in doing so, in 2025 they completely removed their low-end product Acre to accommodate the traditional product Adam as it made its way into the low-end segment. Introducing a product too early meant that R&D costs were too high to maintain, as evident in year 1 and year 2, and so a balance was needed to be found. Products needed to be introduced halfway through or when older products were midway through their shift into other segments. I will now hand over to Linton as he explains the company's strategy.
Thanks, Mohammed. If you were to look at your product lines exclusively in the first and last year of the analysed period, that being 2020 and 2027, you could say that your strategy did not change at all, seeing as a presence in all segments was a common theme in these bookend years. However, the years between is where most change in strategy occurred. As your company initially set out to follow a cost leader strategy with a product lifecycle focus through targeting low-end traditional and high-end segments, strategic direction acted accordingly. A focus on high-end through the introduction of 2 additional products in Apple and Assume to help existing high-end product Atom win market share and eventually drift through the traditional and low-end segments. Discontinuing traditional and low-end product lines Able and Acre to harvest assets was within strategy. However, it was somewhat premature as the 2 lines accounted for 48% of total product sales, with newly established product lines being unable to make up for this loss. The effect on market share is shown on the market share graph between the years 2023 and 2024. Poor financial performance stemming from products in the main markets of high-end, traditional and low-end dictated strategy further alter to include the sale of production capacity to lean up poorly performing lines rather than have them see out their life cycle, as associated with your initial strategy. Combined with a reduction in promotional spending, both of these factors ultimately work to create short-term financial improvements. However, they would impede long-term growth as capacity would need to be repurchased and awareness regenerated. Products in performance and size segments that should have been discontinued and phased out as part of the cost leader strategy saw strategy alter to hold on to these product lines as they helped contribute revenue in times that products in flagship markets of high-end, low-end and traditional were performing poorly. I'll now pass you over to Brianna to talk about company mistakes.
Thanks, Linton. When analysing Andrews' performance as a company, there were 2 main mistakes that were found. The first was Andrews seemed to be too optimistic when it came to forecasting sales for the year. Based on the forecasting methods, decisions were made which affected their costs and profits. To meet the forecast, production and overtime rates increased, which meant there were increased costs in both the production and human resources departments. The graph shows forecasting was off as you were left with high levels of inventory at the end of each year. Having lots of inventory on hand was a negative as you were hit with massive carrying costs and the demand for your products was too low to sell through all of the stock on hand the year after. Years 4 and 8 suggest there was not enough money to produce more stock. Overall, the forecast resulted in a drop in profits, which also led to a drop in your stock price. Andrews could definitely recover from this issue by evaluating forecasting methods and making more realistic predictions. The second mistake made by the company was reducing marketing spend overall. There has been a recent drop in both the promo and sales budgets set by Andrews. While this may have been done to reduce the cost due to not being as profitable as they were previously, it has been less beneficial than expected. The drop has reduced customer awareness ratings and customer accessibility in each segment of the industry. Andrews tend to average about 70% in customer awareness scores overall their sections, with their high-end product being a little more. From year 2024, their customer awareness scores began dropping, with some products reaching as little as 35%. Fortunately, their high-end product managed to hold on. The overall result of this decision was a loss in potential sales and a continuation of dropping profits. In the future, Andrews should try and increase their marketing spend to bring up customer awareness and accessibility factors. I will now pass you over to Shelley.
Andrews as a company is likely to be viewed quite positively by society when it comes to ethical actions. Regarding total quality management, as you can see in this graph, your company was the highest spender in the market on TQMs that have an ethical impact. On GEMI TQEM sustainability initiatives, a total of $5 million was spent over 4 years. This initiative minimises environmental risks, it protects employee health, it reduces toxic byproducts, and promotes recycling. Your company also spent relatively highly on the UNEP Green program, $3 million over 4 years. This program reduces waste from the manufacturing process. Spending on these measures reflects your interest and commitment as leaders of the company to acting in a socially responsible and sustainable manner. This commitment is further demonstrated through your engagement with external stakeholders to achieve your sustainability goals. In this case, it was the United Nations and the Global Environmental Management Initiative. These moves are likely to be viewed positively by society as it shows that you care for the environment and the well-being of your employees. Consideration of your employees was also shown by your modest implementation of automation in the production process, protecting their jobs. Regarding labour negotiations, your company was generally very reasonable, offering the highest annual raises, profit sharing and benefits. A lower wage offer in the 4th year did result in a 14-day strike, but this was not repeated in year 6. Moving now to discuss the impact of your board restructuring in year 5. Andrews experienced a steep decline in all performance measures from year 5 onwards, with minor improvements starting to occur by year 8. As you can see in this graph, after year 4, your company started undertaking R&D projects that took over a year to complete, a practice that was only implemented after the new executive joined. It appears either a new forecasting model was introduced under the new executive, or the original model failed to adjust for product positioning and so broke down when your product positions became increasingly poor. The failure of the forecasting model meant production was not adequately lined up to demand, causing large inventory carrying costs. In year 5, 2 products were discontinued, including your highest selling product. Problems began to occur with your product positioning. The products were falling behind the competitive standard, and so a lot of sales were lost. The lost sales and high inventory carrying cost caused your profits to fall steeply, creating cash flow problems. This resulted in an emergency loan in year 6. The poor cash position of your company restricted your options to improve your performance. I will now pass you back to Linton to discuss the strategy changes.
Thanks, Shelley. So from analysis, we've identified 2 major models that were altered post-shakeup, the first being the sales forecasting model and the second being the product drift model. Starting out with the sales forecasting model, post-shakeup we saw a movement away from what the company traditionally did by employing the best case, worst case scenario, which involved close communication between marketing and production departments, producing inventory levels slightly in excess of sales figures in order to capitalize on any extra segment sales that may be present, but at the same time not be put in a position to be hit hard by high inventory carrying costs. Now you can see the effectiveness of this method as displayed on the inventory on hand graph, with Andrews performing better than or close to the industry average up until the year 2024. However, post shake-up we saw an abandonment of the best case, worst case model, and marketing and production departments acting independently of each other, which resulted in high levels of inventory on hand over the 3-year period from 2024 to 2026. Now moving on to the product drift model. Product drift is integral to a strategy like yours that focuses on product life cycle. However, models used to predict this drift were poorly managed post shake-up. A combination of discontinued lines and no development of new high-end products post shake-up meant the life cycle focus of your strategy could not be realized efficiently. Discontinuing your best performing and only low-end product, Acre, led to no presence in the low-end segment for a period of 4 years. Now, we understand that the decision to harvest low-end assets is part of your strategy. However, based on the generated data, we believe the decision to do so was made too early. Furthermore, no introduction of new high-end products meant products were consumed with long R&D initiatives, keeping them in the high-end segment, rather than allowing them to drift and fulfill out their life cycle in the segments of traditional and low-end. I'll now pass you over to Brianna.
Thanks, Linton. We will now go through a competition analysis. We chose to analyse the best competitor in the industry and analyse it against Andrews. At current, we believe this is Airy. They are the most profitable company, third in market share, and are the best in all their returns measures. They are taking out the competition in stock price, market cap, and asset turnover, and also have the best awareness scores in the majority of segments, increasing their demand. As you can see by the graph, Airy beats Andrews on profit every year of operation. Andrews' contribution margin sits below 30% since 2022, compared to Airy, who consistently sit above 30%. This suggests that there are issues with the variable costs and how much they are actually selling. Customers definitely prefer Airy's products as they are better placed, have better awareness and accessibility ratings. The pricing of the products needs to be reassessed. While Andrews has higher prices, they are not selling as there are better products for cheaper prices. Airy has had a pricing plan in place and continues to make a profit regardless. Andrews do not seem to be able to cover the variable costs they're exposed to each year, which is resulting in small profits or a loss. Airy are able to cover their variable costs and still come out with quite large profits. When comparing the stock prices, Airy's continually made an improvement, giving them the highest stock price in the industry. Andrews' stock price over the years has continued to drop. The first major impact of this is them having to get 2 emergency loans, one in 2021 and one in 2025. An emergency loan will significantly impact stock price, making it drop. The best way to increase the stock price is through profits and giving it to your shareholders. While Andrews' profits are decreasing and resulting in losses, the stock price is being affected. Airy, on the other hand, continues to gain through profits, which increase their stock price. Andrews paid a dividend in 2024, however it didn't really work as their profits weren't high enough. At the present time, Airy has decided to pay a dividend to its shareholders, which will only further build their stock price. I will pass you over to Mohammed, who will go through further analysis.
We know that prowess in one segment of business is simply not enough for a business to succeed. Synergy is needed between different functional areas to ensure that there is a balance between supply and demand. In R&D, Airy stayed competitive, positioning their products relatively close to the ideal, whereas Andrews, because of their strategy, had products caught in mid-phase to different other market segments. Regarding marketing, as you can see from the tables, Andrews ramps up their spending during 2023 and 2024, but then falls off shortly after. Airy, on the other hand, spends reasonably consistently until 2025, after which they opt to spend $4 million for the years to follow, consistently. Andrews' customer awareness scores at the highest have only ever reached 86%, whereas Airy, across all their market segments, maintained a customer awareness score of 90% to 100%. The supply factors must also accommodate the demand factors to achieve synergy, and so, as you can see from the graph, Andrews' production, they started off well, but then slowly declined due to the products not selling. Airy, on the other hand, hadn't produced less than the year before until 2026. This tells us that because Andrews' products weren't selling, they were producing less and less to ensure that the inventory on hand would sell. This is to avoid inventory carrying costs. Evidently, Airy didn't come across this issue. Here are a few recommendations for Andrews to improve as a company. To increase your demand, make sure that you increase your marketing spend to be on par with your competitors to ensure that your customer awareness score allows for the most possible customers to be aware of your product. You also want to lower your prices, as it's evident there you're asking for much more than Team Airy, and this is to make sure that customers pick the cheapest option and make sure that your product is deemed as an option. Lastly, there are a few issues regarding the consistency between decisions made in R&D. They aren't necessarily being followed up in production or marketing. If you have a product that's been revised or you know it's going to be in the ideal spot, make sure you produce the most of it and make sure you back it up with marketing to ensure as many people see it. All right, I'm going to hand you over to Linton.
Thanks, Mohammed. On behalf of Chester Consultancy and my colleagues Shelley, Brianna and Mohammed, I would like to thank you, the Andrews Board of Directors, for appointing us to facilitate your strategic review. We would like to commend you on your commitment to the environment and sustainability through involvement in the United Nations Environment Programme and the Global Environmental Management Initiative. We believe through implementing the needed change our insights have identified regarding the areas of research and development, production and marketing, in the coming years you will become the company others in the industry are compared to. I'd now like to invite any questions that you may have.